Okay. Just kind of seeing who's here, and thank you for being here. I'm going to talk about something in the Buddhist teaching that's called the two dimensions. And tonight I'm just going to talk about what that is and a little bit about the characteristics and kind of how that relates to our experiences. And then next week, I'll go a little deeper into how it conditions our experiences, how we, I guess that's the best way to say it, just a little deeper into how it relates to our experiences. And then the last talk will be about how to use that information to make our lives in this dimension more meaningful, more joyful, more beneficial for ourselves and for other people. So it seemed to me as I was thinking about this that this topic needed more than one talk. So that's why I stretched it out. Also, because it's a lot to take in. And so maybe spreading it out a little bit makes it easier for us to manage and really process it. So Jake, will you show that first, the Enzo that I've got a picture of it down there in front of the if you can see it here, but the people online can't see it. Basically, those of you that can see it down there on the floor, it says, it's always now. Okay, I want to see the other one as well. Let's see that other one first. Welcome to the country of the present moment. That's Ty's calligraphy. My calligraphy is much more primitive down there on the floor. Now let's see the other one. So as I was thinking about the present moment, I created this clock, and you can see that it just says now, 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 now. It's always now. I don't know if any of you are old enough, but I am. When I go to the doctor for my checkup, one of the things they make me do is draw a clock face and tell me what time it's supposed to show. I think if you can't do that anymore, then they say you have dementia or whatever. So I was drawing this clock and I thought, you know what, the next time I have to draw this clock at the doctor's office, this is what it's going to look like. They'll probably put me in an institution or something. But anyway, the point is that it is always now. And we can say by this clock, maybe it's, close to 1 o'clock. But this is I wanted it to illustrate the two dimensions. It's always now, and in this relative dimension, right now, it's actually a little after 6. So we are living in both of these dimensions simultaneously. Thank you, Jake. So because we're living in 2 dimensions simultaneously, it can get a little bit confusing. And because our minds are, even though the mind is always in the present as well, it's always here and in the present, but it has the ability to think about other things, form thoughts. And these mental formations can take us anywhere. So let's get back to a little bit more about the topic of the 2 dimensions. In a little bit, I would like us to sing the song, I Have Arrived, I Am Home. This little song, as many of our practice songs are, it's a Dharma talk all on its own, because it tells us where we are. In this case, Ty says, I have arrived, I am home. And I want to talk about what that points to. In the here and in the now. And these words, in the here and in the now, we use a lot in our teachings and in our talks and in our meditations and songs. And the song goes on to say, I am solid, I am free. In the ultimate, I dwell. So let me just kind of take that apart a little bit. I have arrived, in this case, means I have arrived in this moment. I have arrived now. I am home, which means I'm here. This is where I am. I am home. In the here and in the now. That's where I am, in the here and in the now. That's where I have arrived, and that's what I call home. Then he says, I am solid, I am free. When I first read that and sang it, I thought, what does solid mean? Because nothing is solid. We are, permeable. And then I began to understand he's talking about our practice. I'm solid in my practice. I'm really firm in my practice. And then it says, I am free. Well, if we are solid and firm in our practice, we are free from a lot of distractions. We're free from some delusions. We are free from the pains that if we are solid in our practice, we know how to manage the pains and mitigate them and learn from them. So that's what that little bit means. And then in the ultimate, I dwell is the last part. The ultimate is one of those dimensions, which I'm going to talk about now. And this is where Ty says, I dwell. So the Buddha taught that there are two dimensions to life, and we should be able to touch both of them because that makes our lives very, very stable. So the two dimensions are the historical dimension, sometimes referred to as the relative dimension, and the ultimate dimension, which is sometimes called nirvana, actually. And our task is about learning to beautifully exist in both of these dimensions simultaneously. So to me, that was the trick. That was the challenge. Ty has given us a wonderful analogy of water and wave. And so he says, this is Ty, a quote from him. He said, talking about the two dimensions. One is like a wave, and we call it the historical dimension. The other is like the water, and we can call it the ultimate dimension or nirvana. We usually touch just the wave, Ty says, but when we discover how to touch the water, we receive the highest fruit that meditation can offer. So in this analogy, Ty is telling us that the historical dimension, in the historical dimension, we are like the wave. We will flow, we will crest, we will fall, we will crash into the shore, we'll be buffeted by storms. So we usually think of ourselves in terms of a wave. In other words, this kind of almost can be tumultuous. The other dimension is like the water. This is the ultimate dimension. And usually we just touch the wave, but when we can discover how to touch the water, he says we receive the highest fruit that meditation can offer. So we are the wave and we are the water. Ty also has an illustration in one of his books If he's kind of relating as if the wave is talking. And so the wave is comparing herself to other waves and say, oh, I'm not as beautiful as that wave. I'm not as high as that one. I'm not as fast as this one. And then seeing that the wave is approaching the shore, the wave fears that they're going to die as they crash into the shore. And this is kind of how we live. We live cresting, falling, calming, just buffeted by all the events of our lives. But when the wave realizes it's the water, then everything makes sense. So the wave and the water are manifestations of the same element. In the historical dimension, we are experiencing life in this human form. And we're like the wave in this human form. At the same time, we already exist in the ultimate dimension. And I think of the ultimate, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. I think of the historical dimension as clock calendar time, and the ultimate dimension as simply now. I have also sometimes referred to the historical dimension as the hysterical dimension, because sometimes it seems that way. But we are always here, and it's always now, like the water in the wave. And this is an interesting thing. As I was thinking about this now business, I recognize that my body is always now. It's always in this dimension. It's always now. I can always count on kind of connecting with my body to get present, to be here. But I was thinking that the mind is something else. But the more I thought about it, I realized the mind is also now. So whatever the mind is thinking is happening now. But it's so strong and so powerful. The thoughts can take us to the past, to the future, anywhere. So even though the mind is happening now, it's in the now, it definitely has the potential of pulling us out of the present moment. I had some quotes that I wanted to share with you. Let me see if I can find that page. Einstein, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. And then a Zen master, who's anonymous, said, engrossed with personal affairs, I forgot who I am. Lost connection.
Your camera is turned off on this.
Okay, all right. Let's see, where was I? Oh yeah, engrossed with personal affairs, I forgot who I am. Rumi also talked about forgetting who you are. He said, I have lived on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens, I've been knocking from the inside. So that's several examples of what happens when we're in the relative dimension. Let me get my coffee cup. Am I still being heard on the line?
Yeah, you're being heard.
Okay. All right. So where am I? this fact that we are simultaneously in this historical dimension and in the ultimate dimension is something that Buddha and Tai and many other teachers have wanted us to understand. And it's why they've offered so many teachings about how to train our minds to be present, to be here and now. When we remember the truth of who we are, when we remember that we are residents of the ultimate dimension and also the historical dimension, we will be able to navigate this historical dimension much more easily. We can ride the waves and enjoy the journey. Here's what Tai says. Your true home is in the here and the now. It is not limited by time, space, nationality, or race. Your true home is not some abstract idea. It is something you can touch and live in every moment. With mindfulness and concentration, the energies of the Buddha, you can find your true home in the full relaxation of your mind and body in this present moment. We use these words here, now, present, moment. We use those words a lot. And so I was curious to see what the dictionary says that these words mean. So here is defined in the dictionary as a noun and says this place, who also in or at this place. For instance, if somebody's calling the roll and you say here. So here is designating some space and time, this place. Now is, says that it's an adverb. And this means at the present time or moment. And there are lots of other uses of it, such as just now thought of him now, or maybe now we know something, or now hear this. So now is used in a lot of ways. In this context, we're talking about this very second, present moment, less than a second. So present, the dictionary says, means now existing or in progress. And moment is described as a minute portion or point of time. When you think about a moment in time, it really is impossible to pin it down. We can't pin down the present moment. As soon as we say this is the present moment, we're already in the next one. It's a flow. So when we talk about now, it just to me, it gets so almost esoteric. It's like a koan. It's easier to understand it than to talk about it. So I just like to remember it's always now. There are two books that have helped me begin to understand this a little better. One is just a book of calligraphy, Thai's calligraphy. It's called This Moment is Full of Wonders. And the first thing you saw was his calligraphy that says, welcome to the present moment, the country of the present moment. But anyway, there are lots of others in here that I find very, very helpful. So just to look at one of these calligraphies is something, listen. It's like, and this one on the back, the way out is in. It's kind of like Rumi's poem. The way out of your troubles, out of your confusion, is to go into your true home. The other book that I used for this talk is this one, again by Tai. It's called Inside the Now. This book is very interesting. Ty wrote this not long before he passed away. And it contains two parts. The first part is autobiographical, and it's reflections from Ty on his early days as a young monk and the poetry that was written by him and some other of his friends. The second part is described as a meditation on time. And man, I almost would like to read the book to you, but I picked out a few quotes that I really thought would be relevant and interesting. So the first one is where Ty says, past and future are both illusions. They're only ideas. Only the present is real. Only the now is real. That is why I have to come back to the now if I really want to see the Buddha and really see myself. The now is the only moment when and where you can find what you have been looking for. Remember the poem about that when we said, I've been knocking from the inside? The now is the only moment when and where you can find what you have been looking for. You may have been searching for nirvana. You've been looking for God. You've been looking for enlightenment, for awakening. You've been looking for the Pure Land and for your true nature of no birth and no death. And he sums it up like this. It turns out that everything you have been looking for is already there in the present moment. And the secret of the finding is to go back to the now. This is what we do when we meditate. We do our best to get our minds to come back into the now. I did mention earlier the definitions, and Ty says here represents space and now represents time. The now is encountering the here. Let me see, there was another piece I wanted to read, I think. There's going to be plenty of time for discussion. If you have some questions or something you want to share about your understanding of historical and ultimate dimensions. So another calligraphy that's in his book, this book, says, only now do I see. And again, this is pointing out that if whatever we're searching for can only be found in the now, in this present moment, which is why we do our best to train ourselves to look at things and be in the present moment when we are searching, when we're looking. Let's see if I missed anything. This is a little bit, I'll probably talk about this more next week, but there is another phrase from Thai. Well, actually it's from the Buddhist teachings. And the sentence says, this is because that is because this is, which is making the connection between the historical and the ultimate. And it shows that they not only coexist, but they're working together. This is because that is because this is. So let's see. Kind of got myself confused with all these papers, sorry. So back to the song. I have arrived, I am home. let's finish up with that. You can't see the clock. So some of you know this song. If you don't, just echo what I'm singing. And I know there are not very many of us, but just don't worry about what you sound like. Just sing out. I have arrived, I am home in the here and the now. Again, I have arrived, I am home in the here now. I am solid, I am free. I am solid, I am free. In the ultimate I dwell. In the ultimate I dwell. Now let's just put it all together. I have arrived, I am home. In the here, in the now. I have arrived, I am home. In the here, in the now. I am solid, I am free. I am solid, I am free. In the ultimate I dwell. In the ultimate I dwell. Thank you. So we have a good 30 minutes left to share and discuss whatever you want to ask, whatever you want to share. I would like to hear your, how do you navigate in each of these dimensions? How do you navigate in the relative dimension while remaining in somehow connected to the ultimate dimension?
So then going in,
Yes.
thank you for the talk.
You're welcome.
And I was thinking of that now with for the first thing that came to my mind was nationalities, because when you're in the now, that doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And so we're seeing how much of a mess that can be with Israel and Palestine currently. And I always lived it because my mother's from the United States and my father's from Mexico.
Mhm.
So I have dual citizenship and I grew up in Mexico. And I was always exposed to the US culture because of it being the neighboring country, and I grew up in Cancun, and it was pretty much a colony of the United States in the 90s when I was growing up there. And so it's interesting to me, like when I was growing up in the historical time in Mexico, I didn't I saw and I didn't see how much the contrasts make you tell the difference. Because being in Mexico, it was easy to understand what is not Mexican, and so what is American or from the United States.
Mhm.
Now that I'm here in the United States, now it's easier to see what Mexican-ness is.
Mhm.
And so when you're in the now, that doesn't matter.
Right.
And so that's how I go, back and forth. And also breathing. When I'm at work and when I catch myself getting flustered,
Mhm.
I take deep breaths and, I think of now,
Mhm.
and then bowing out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's the beauty of the breath. It takes us back to now, takes us back to our true home. Yes.
I just wanted to make an observation that kind of connected with the song we sang in the beginning about how we are all basically, we are each other, we are each other's suffering, we are each other's happiness.
Mhm.
And most of your talk centers around how I'm in the now, I am here. And I don't think it's meant this way, but we're not individuals. Like,
Right.
you know, it's not an individualistic philosophy or when we say I am here, I am now, we're speaking for everyone.
Right, because everybody else is.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's I think that helps me to know that everybody else is in the same position because they are also in their own now,
Mhm.
and us being one person and connected,
Yeah,
almost like one organism, you know. Now, my now is everybody else's now as well. And
Right.
sometimes I understand that people can be, you know, have their own troubles to deal with or going through their own battles. And it's important for me to come back to that point that their now is my now. So for me to understand where they're coming from and feel compassion, I have to identify with the fact that we are each other, you know, we are each other's happiness and suffering. So I think that now is more vast than our brains can actually conceptualize, you know, since it encompasses the entire universe, basically.
Yep.
So for us to fit maybe as a tool for us to feel empathy and compassion with others, understand that that now includes everybody else as well.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. When we can remember exactly what you said, then we do have empathy for the people who are connecting themselves as a wave. You know, they're not understanding their ultimate reality, but they're just being tossed and turned like a wave. But yeah, and remembering for them that they are a creature of the ultimate dimension as well. So, but you're absolutely right. Now is everybody. Everybody's in the now, whether they know it or not, whether they live it or not. Yes.
First of all, thank you for the talk, man. I have a question, not directly correlated with your talk, but had to do with something that like we say like at the beginning of the meditation, and it really like stuck to me. Something about the inferior complex, the superior complex, and the equality complex. Are you able to speak on that just a little bit?
Sure. It's one of the things in the song we said, I'm solid, I'm free. That's one of the things we strive to free ourselves from, the delusions of a superiority complex, an inferiority complex, or an equality complex. So why would you have to let go of the equality complex? I mean, that sounds like it'd be a good thing to say, this person is equal to me, but it's still a way of comparing, and it's still kind of separating yourself from the other person. And that's the big thing. It's the separation, because we are not separate from one another. And so that is, I think, what is meant by, it's easy to see that you want to get rid of feeling like you're superior to somebody. And also that you want to let go of the idea that you're inferior. But even if you think about equality, you're still thinking of yourself and the other person separately. So, I mean, you might say now you're equal, but you're still separate beings. Does that make sense? So we want to let go of the idea that we are separate from one another. Thich Nhat Hanh calls it interbeing. We're all connected. And that's kind of like what you were saying. We're all connected. And so we don't want to compare ourselves in any way because it indicates we are talking about being separate from one another. Yeah, thanks for the question. I always appreciate it when people pay attention to what we're reading. Anything else?
This is Nick bowing in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your talk, Bobbie. I like this topic a lot. And one thing I thought of was I guess like in the historical dimension, and I guess in our modern culture, it seems like more and more of a practice to kind of define yourself based on your identities. So like whether that's like racial or ethnic or your gender or things like this. And I think defining yourself in that way is important, but it's important to also recognize like that's the historical dimension, and there's also something beyond these identities that we have that we carry. And I think when we touch the ultimate dimension, those identities are not as important, if that makes sense. And I was just thinking, like, I see the ultimate dimension more in nature or like in the outdoors. When you if you were to tell, I don't know, a river, hey, like we're in Arkansas or we're in Texas, this is Texas, the river might say, you know, well, actually I started in somewhere like far north in Canada and flowed all the way down here. So I don't really understand what you mean when you say like this is a specific entity and this is cut off from other things. Or, you know, if you tell a bird like, hey, you're bird, you belong in Dallas, you're from Dallas, you belong in Dallas, the bird might say, you know, well, when it gets cold in Dallas, I'm going to go to Mexico and that's where I live, like that's my home. So it seems like there's a lot of elements of nature. You can see like networks of trees that transcend whole countries, that flow throughout, you know, different countries and flow across borders. And it's almost kind of funny to see these like borders, these barriers that we erect as human beings as kind of trivial, I guess, from the ultimate dimension. But I also don't want to like spiritually bypass and just say like, let's just all dwell in the ultimate dimension all the time and forget about what country we're from, if that makes sense. Like, so having both, it seems like it's important. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing.
It's very important because I think if you decide you're going to live totally in the ultimate dimension, then I think you would have to give up the historical dimension. You'd have to, yeah. I don't think you can stay here without dwelling in both. If you're not connected to the ultimate dimension, and through nature, I love that, Nick. That's a really good example. It's very much what Ty was talking about when he talked about the water and the wave. But if you don't remember, if a person doesn't remember the ultimate dimension at all, then that's when it might become the hysterical dimension. And it's, you know, that would be no fun. And helping people understand that we all live in both of these dimensions, I feel like that's very beneficial, very helpful for people to understand that. I kind of, Nick, if I do this talk again, I'm going to include a bit about nature. I like that. That's very good.
Cornell bowing in. Yeah, but you're just talking about probably about living in the, I think we're called to live in the historic dimension where we are right now. Because
Mhm.
by being there, you are able to see the suffering that exists in the world. And you're able to experience that suffering and the joys, which makes us grow spiritually.
Right.
Because that's what allows us to develop compassion, understanding, coexistence,
Mhm.
stuff. And I think we're often reminded in Thai's teaching too, that it's not, that going off somewhere to live totally disconnected from the real world is not a possibility.
Right.
Not recommended. We're here to have a responsibility in this life and be bodhisattvas to those who are living the story.
Thank you, Cornell. Yeah, it is very important. And I think it's important also to recognize your personal existence in this relative dimension and know that we are all connected both here and in the ultimate dimension. So it's fine to say, my name is Bobbie Perkins, I'm a teacher, I study with Thich Nhat Hanh, you know, just go through, you can have your own biography, I live in Dallas, et cetera, et cetera. These are descriptions that make it easier for us to connect with one another in this historical dimension. But at the same time, it's helpful to remember that we also all exist in this ultimate dimension where these categories are not important. Anything else? Yes,
Sorry, I have a question.
okay.
What was this concept you spoke about during your drama? That Thich Nhat Hanh said about we get the best fruits out of meditation when we're the water instead of versus the wave.
Mhm.
I'm not sure I quite understood the concept. Would you be able to explain it just a little bit more?
Yeah. When we meditate, one of the things we're trying to do, one of our, I don't like to say goals because it's not a goal, but one of the things we try to do is really be present, just to let go of, you know, all of the past, the future. Sometimes in a guided meditation, we will say, when thoughts arise, just imagine them like clouds in a vast blue sky that just drift away. So we're wanting to not focus on these thoughts, but to come back to the space between the thoughts. And that is where the ultimate is. That's where the now is, in the space between those thoughts. So that is the place where we connect with the ultimate, and that is the water. The water is that dimension is our true self. This is true. This dimension here is also true, but it's not ultimate. It's transitory. We're going to have this life, this experience for a while, and then we're going to pass on. But the ultimate dimension is ultimate. The now always exists. It's one of the few things that's not impermanent. Actually, I don't like the way I said that. The now is impermanent. The present moment is impermanent because it's always changing. It's always moving. But the now, I guess, I would have to say, is constant. It's always now.
So would you say basically the water is essentially like the sky that we talk about, and then without attachment to those clouds?
You could say that, yeah. Because if you're the water, you'll be aware of the waves, but you won't be distracted by them or discouraged by them. Yeah. That's a good observation. Thank you. Yes, Cornell.
And if I could take one at the waves and the water too. Um, Something that I'll observe, and I don't know if it's in the context of what you're talking about, but on the windshield of the car when it's raining, don't do this while you're driving as best as the passenger. Watch a drop of water on the windshield, and they're kind of moving around, and then two hit each other, and then it becomes this trickle that goes down. And the way I look at those, the drops now have their individual, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. They join and they're no longer individual drops.
Mhm.
They become part of the puddle that falls on the street. And I think also the waves of the ocean, or the water, we've got the water here, and then the wave comes up and sees itself. Look at me, I'm gonna do all this stuff, and in a moment, it's totally gone. And I think sometimes when I think of Ty's talk about waves and the water, is that don't see us as that individual thing that's there to do. If you can see yourself as you're still part of the water, well, I don't know how to answer that in that sentence. But, see that you're part of the water, and not separate individual. And you can do that with the sky too. Then the sky is not separate from the water, because the atmosphere and the clouds and all of that are water.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another one of my favorite things to talk about is the connection, how everything is connected. Nothing is separate from anything else. It's just all connected. One of my favorite little quotes is from a woman named Jane Hirschfield. She's a poet, but one time she was being interviewed and she was asked, can you sum up Buddhism in 6 words? And she said, everything changes, everything's connected, pay attention. And that was a mantra for me for a long, long time, because that's it. That's the truth. Everything's connected and it's all impermanent. It's all changing. So another thing that Cornell, what you said reminded me of the song that we sing, "The ocean refuses no river." All of the rivers, all of the streams, all the creeks, all the water is flowing toward an ocean. That's fascinating to me. And that's like we're all flowing in this ultimate dimension, even though we look different. We look like a creek, we look like a stream, we look like a river, we look like a wave, but we're all part of this vast ocean of water, of consciousness. Yes,
Jerry, bowing in. When you first ended your talk earlier, I think you had asked how we navigate the waves of life, so to speak. And then also listening to you speak about the waves versus the water, it kind of reminded me, like on vacation, swimming in the ocean. If you try to swim on the surface of the ocean and it's windy, the waves just, they buffet you around and they like land in your face, and it's very difficult to make progress. But if you, catch your breath and then dive under a little bit, you can actually make pretty good progress by swimming under the waves, because it's a little calmer, or it feels calmer. And you can actually sense or hear the sound is calmer. Whereas when you're up above the, riding the waves, the sound is very, stormy, I guess, in a way. And it kind of reminds me I think because in life, when things get a little stressful or difficult, I think breath is always what I've always gone back to. It's just focusing on my breath while listening to whoever's, upset or something. But,
Mhm.
Turning part of my attention back inside to my breath. And when you do that, it may be different for others, but for me, it's kind of the calming, when you go underwater, you
Yeah.
can hear things, but it doesn't sound the same.
Mhm.
And it's the same when I turn my attention to my breath. It's like I can still hear what's going on, but
Mhm.
it's different. It's a calmer.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I really enjoyed your analogy.
Thank you.
And yeah,
And thank you for that, that understanding. That's great. I'm going to leave you with one last quote. I read this online, and I don't know who Chamtrul Rinpoche is, but this is what he said. The world tells you to follow your dreams. Buddhism tells you to wake up. I like it. All right, thank you so much. We'll see if there are any announcements. There's a sound band coming up.
December.
Hi, I'd be happy to make an announcement.
Okay, I didn't know you were there, June.
Yeah, I've been listening and I was thinking about what similar to what Nick